I've got some bad news for you. If you're watching this video, there's a 50% chance you're infected with a parasite. This parasite is subtly controlling your behavior. Everything from making you more likely to have a traffic accident, more likely to commit suicide, subtly altering your political beliefs and who you vote for, but it can also make you look more attractive to the opposite sex. Toxoplasma gondii, or T. gondii, is known as the cat parasite. And it's the reason why pregnant women are told to stay away from cat litter boxes. It's probably the most successful parasite in the world. Sorry, parasite. This microscopic creature is capable of infecting almost any warm-blooded animal, including humans. It's infected people in every single continent across the planet. And it's estimated that at least 2 billion of us are already infected. Now, you might be thinking, Adam, what's this got to do with cat psychology and science? Well, the definitive host for this parasite, and the only place in the world it can sexually reproduce, is inside cats. So before we look at how a parasite is controlling us like a brain slug out of Futurama, it's important to understand what a parasite actually is. T. gondii is a protozoan parasite, a single-celled organism that lives in or on another organism from a different species, its host, and it benefits by deriving nutrients at the host's expense. It's zoonotic, which means an infectious disease transmitted from animals to humans, or vice versa, and it was discovered in 1908 in the tissues of a hamster-like rodent called gondii. In that same year, it was also found in a rabbit in Brazil. When you're infected with this parasite, it can lead to something called Toxoplasmosis. The first conclusive case in humans was found in 1938. An infant girl was born by C-section at Baby's Hospital in New York City. At just 3 days of age, she started having seizures, and doctors found lesions in both of her eyes. She died just 1 month later, and an autopsy discovered the parasite in both her eye and brain tissue. Toxoplasma really likes the retina, and ocular toxoplasmosis causes you to get floaters and blurred vision, eventually leading to permanent scarring and blindness. So now we know what it is. How has it managed to infect 25% of the world's population? So although T. gondii can infect, be transmitted by, and asexually reproduce inside any warm-blooded animal, including humans, it can only sexually reproduce inside the intestines of the cat family. Wild and domestic felines are considered the definitive host for the parasite, while warm-blooded animals like birds and rodents serve as secondary hosts. When cats eat these infected animals, T. gondii takes up residence and multiplies in the cat's intestines, shedding eggs in the cat's feces. These eggs or seeds are called oocysts, and they are really resilient and can survive long periods of time in the environment. People are then infected via exposure to these eggs. This could be when you're cleaning your cat's litter box, or you've accidentally touched anything that's coming into contact with the cat's litter. It could also be when you're out gardening and you just forgot to wash your hands, or you didn't wash the vegetables that you picked. Or you might have eaten pork or other undercooked meat that's been infected with the parasite. Or you just might have drank water that's contaminated as well. In some rare cases, if you've been bitten by a cat, or you get an organ transplant or a blood transfusion, you can also get infected if you received any of those from a Toxoplasma positive donor. Globally, the infection rate is estimated at around 30 to 50%, but some countries are at greater risk. So for example, France has a high prevalence of infection. This is related to the French's preference for eating raw or undercooked meat. In Central America, there's a lot of stray and wild cats, and the climate is really favourable to the oocysts surviving in the soil. Australia also has a massive population of feral cats. It's home to huge amounts of farmland, and many Australians like to eat their red meat rare, all increasing the risk of infection. Okay, so now we know what it is and how it can be spread. How does it influence our behaviour? T. gondii infiltrates the central nervous system and influences our neurotransmitters. In human infections, Toxoplasma requires a host cell, like a neuron, where it can set up house. And then to enable its own growth and survival, the parasite hijacks the host cell, and then it creates food reserves, which allows it to survive for decades. Toxoplasma also kickstarts your body's inflammatory response itself. But it manipulates the response for its own needs and keeps it low enough so that it can thrive. But it doesn't let your body switch off the inflammatory response, which is why the disease can be so dangerous in people who already have a weakened immune system. It's this lying dormant for decades, cloaked in the cysts of muscle and brain tissue, specifically the emotion processing region called the amygdala, which mounting research is suggesting can have an insidious impact. So, for example, in animals, T. gondii actually tricks rodents to lose their fear of cats, and it impairs their memory, making it easier for the cats to hunt and kill them. Elsewhere, chimpanzees that were infected with the parasite were shown to actually become attracted to the urine of leopards, which are their natural predator. The manipulation hypothesis argues the parasite is altering the behavior of its host animals for its own benefit. So in this case, it's increasing the odds that these intermediate hosts, like the chimpanzee or the rodents, will be eaten by the cats or the leopard so it can make it to the intestines of its definitive host and start reproducing. So what does the research look like in humans? Well, it's pretty troubling. This parasite has been linked to personality changes, like making us more impulsive, but also more entrepreneurial, linked to the emergence of psychotic symptoms like schizophrenia, and makes people more susceptible to committing suicide or having car accidents. It does all this by affecting the dopamine levels in our brains. Dopamine is a crucial neurotransmitter that influences a lot of our human behavior, including mood, reward, and risk-taking behaviors. So with car accidents, latent toxoplasmosis, which is a long-term infection, has been shown to increase the reaction times of those infected because of the cysts in our neural and muscular tissue. One study looked at 85 men and 61 women aged 15 to 70 years old in Prague who had been victims of traffic accidents where they could actively influence the probability of their accident. And the subjects with latent toxoplasmosis were more likely to be involved in the accidents versus the non-infected subjects, suggesting that asymptomatic acquired toxoplasmosis might actually be a serious and underestimated public health problem. One interesting finding of the study was that the relative risk of accidents decreases the longer you've had the infection, suggesting that the body can adapt. Okay, so how is it going to affect who I vote for? Well, one study found that it can alter our political beliefs and our values. Those who are infected with the parasite tended to demonstrate a higher degree of us versus them thinking. In this study, 2,315 Czech residents were surveyed on various questions relating to their health and their political beliefs, and around 600 of them reported to be infected with Toxoplasma. Across the entire sample, Toxoplasmosis was associated with higher tribalism, which is a construct defined by one's loyalty to one's tribe, or the us versus them mentality. This mentality can lead to increased political polarization, making people more likely to vote based on their group identity rather than individual issues or candidate qualifications. It's no wonder identity politics is so popular these days. Okay, so it's gonna kill me in a car crash and it's gonna change who I vote for, but is it gonna make me look more attractive? Yes. So among the many neurobiological changes that an infection brings to its host, researchers think some of the changes can sometimes benefit the host animal, which could then also benefit the host in the future, helping its transmission. Researchers found that Toxoplasma-infected male rats were viewed as more sexually attractive and were preferred as sexual partners by non-infected female rats. So scientists sought to see if the same effects were visible in humans. And researchers compared 35 healthy college students, 22 men and 13 women, who were infected with T. gondii versus another sample of 178 people, 86 men and 92 women, who did not carry the parasite. Following a number of different tests, including surveys, physical measurements, and visual assessments, the researchers found that Toxoplasma-infected people had significantly lower facial fluctuating asymmetry versus those who weren't infected. Fluctuating asymmetry is a measure of deviation from symmetrical features, with lower levels of asymmetry, aka you're more symmetrical, linked with better physical health, better genes, and general attractiveness. Facial symmetry is widely regarded as a key element in beauty across many cultures in the world. It's a marker of genetic fitness, and symmetrical faces are just nicer for our eyes to look at. And then in a separate experiment, a group of 205 independent volunteers rated the photos of people. And the raters found that infected participants' faces looked both significantly more attractive and healthier than non-infected participants. And they're not really sure why this is, but it could be down to higher testosterone levels, because other research suggests that infected men have higher testosterone than non-infected men. Now, it doesn't sound all that bad, right? I'll just drive more carefully and avoid the car accidents. I'll be more conscious of who I'm voting for, and it can make me look more attractive. But because T. gondii can lie dormant for decades, long-term damage is possible, even as you get into old age. Emerging evidence has linked T. gondii with increased frailty among older people. In a study of 601 older adults, those with higher serointensity or a higher concentration of antibodies to the cat-borne parasite were more likely to show signs of frailty, including exhaustion, loss of muscle mass, and other indications of declining health. It's not great news for older people who might already have a weakened immune system. And it gets even worse for the old people. Infection was also associated with higher rates of suicide, but only in women aged over the age of 60. Now, it's worth noting that the overall picture in research when it comes to T. gondii is mixed. A lot of these studies have small sample sizes, which is a limiting factor. And association and links don't necessarily mean a causal relationship. What's more, the best study done on Toxoplasma, in my opinion, was a population representative birth cohort study. This is where you follow a group of people from when they're babies all the way to when they grow to adults. And in this study, they found no relationship between being infected with T. gondii and having neurological disorders, poor impulse control, or personality and neurocognitive deficits. So, should you put your cat up for adoption? No, because in most people, Toxoplasma is relatively harmless. Most people don't know they've been infected, and only about 10% have flu-like symptoms. A headache, some fever, swelling of the lymph nodes, which usually resolves itself within a few weeks to months. It's only pregnant women or those with compromised immune systems which should take more care, because it's possible for a woman to be infected during pregnancy, and she can then pass the infection on to her unborn child, which is called congenital toxoplasmosis, which is what happened to the baby girl in 1938 from earlier. So while the mother may not have symptoms, there's severe consequences for the child, like disease of the nervous system or the eyes. So it's highly advisable for pregnant women to stay away from cat litter. What are the other general tips for preventing infections? Change your cat litter box daily, wash your hands afterwards, or use gloves. Avoid eating undercooked meats. Cooking meat to a temperature of 66 degrees or freezing it ahead of cooking is an effective way to kill the parasite. Rinse fruits and vegetables before eating them. Avoid drinking untreated water, like straight from rivers or creeks. And again, if you're pregnant or immunocompromised, avoid changing cat litter boxes. Keep cats indoors and avoid stray cats. So now you know about the world's most successful parasite. If you want more cat science, hit subscribe.